What's up, my friends? Welcome into an emergency edition of Crossing the Line podcast. No pod tonight. We'll have that for you later this week. It will drop sometime later in the week, but we welcome you into this emergency session. It is the three of four Philadelphia sports fans here on the show. Myself, Tyler Zulli, Mike Davella, Mark Fignani, and gentlemen, this is simple. It's one topic. It's why it's an emergency. Doc Rivers out as the Philadelphia 76ers head coach after 3 seasons.
Why is everybody
Start
still
there.
calling him? Why is
Simple.
everybody still calling him Doc? His name is Glenn Rivers. He doesn't earn that title. He doesn't have a doctorate in anything. If there's a doctorate in choking and losing in Game 7, then he's got that. That's about it.
I didn't even agree with this hire at the beginning. I thought it was terrible. I thought it was one of those let's just throw a veteran in there and just see if this leadership works. It didn't fucking work. Obviously, it wasn't going to work. Doc Rivers isn't a good coach. He hasn't been a good coach for I don't know how long. I'm not saying he's never been a good coach. I mean, he used to be a good coach. It's different now. All right, it's different.
Was he ever a good coach? Hey, Mark, I've got something for you.
Yes,
Here's a
with
stat.
the Orlando Magic.
We're going to play a game called Guess That Coach. All right, I'm going to read some stats from year to year. Here we go. 2003.
Doc.
This coach don't hold on. Hold your
You don't know that,
your
Tyler.
guesses
You don't know
until
that.
the end. Hold your guesses until the end. 2003, he blew a 3-1 lead. 2009, 2010, 2012, he blew 3-2 leads. 2015 and 2020, he blew more 3-1 leads. In 2023, he blew a 3-2 lead. Guess that coach. Go.
Was it Glenn Rivers?
That's correct.
Wasn't
It
Brett
was
Brown.
Glenn Rivers.
Wasn't Brett Brown.
It wasn't Brett Brown.
You win a disappointing fandom.
You know how I said if the Sixers made the finals, lost. At least they didn't make the finals. I didn't have to do anything really terrible.
That's true. They're not second place.
I made many points throughout the course of this postseason and even into the back end of the regular season that this team can't hurt me anymore. You know, I saw a tweet not too long ago that said, you can't make fun of Sixers fans because the people that hate the Sixers the most are Sixers fans. And it's true. We've gone through the gamut of emotions. And now we're sitting here talking about 3 years after the firing of a coach that we believed needed to be fired in Brett Brown, which was the right move at the time. We're talking about the firing of another coach that we believed is the right move and a coach that needed to be fired. A guy that had a 65% winning percentage in the regular season. It was 154 and 82 across 3 regular season campaigns. That's 72 games over 500 in 3 years. 72 games over 500. You know what they got out of those 3 years? Second round exit, second round exit, second round exit. Choke job, Ben Simmons, camaraderie, or whatever you want to call it. And quite frankly, the most disappointing performance that we've seen out of an MVP in quite some time. This whole thing is not Doc Rivers' fault, but Doc Rivers needed to be fired today.
Who had a worse performance, though? Was it Embiid or Harden? Harden had 5 points over 4 games. It was terrible.
I would say it was James.
He crawled up into a shell.
Yeah, James needed to be the difference maker there. We knew what the Celtics were capable of, and it always felt like the Celtics were the better team because they are. They're more well-rounded, and I do think that despite the Sixers having the most star power up at the top in terms of Embiid and Harden, Jason Tatum was the one who separated himself, and he played like the best player in that series towards the end of the game 6 and 7. I know obviously he started off poorly in game 6, but that's what we've been talking about. Good players. No, I'm going to go as far as saying great players are the ones that can separate themselves in crunch time and really take it to the next level and be the impact player that they need to be when it matters. Third and fourth quarter. How many points did James Harden have in the fourth quarter in these key games? It was ridiculous.
0. The answer is 0.
He disappeared completely.
0
and
points
it's like
in the fourth game 6 and game 7 fourth
It's
quarters.
like Ben Simmons
0.
syndrome. I don't understand it. So I mean, it was just brutal. I do say though, this was something that obviously, Mark, you kind of mentioned. I'm in the same boat as you. I never thought that Doc Rivers was a good hire from the get-go. I didn't want him. Another ridiculous yet true stat. Since 2015, you know what he is in his past 10 games with the opportunity to clinch a conference final? Can you guess? In 10 games.
0-10.
Correct. He's 0-10. Why would you want a coach that can't end up doing anything positive for his team? to lead your team who hasn't seen a conference final in years to get them to the conference finals. It almost seems stupid. And that's what the Sixers have done. Not only are they going 1 for 6 in top draft picks during the process era, they also trade a budding superstar in Mikal Bridges for a guy with a freaking peanut allergy. They wouldn't let Sam Hinkie cook. They bring in the Colangelo idiots. And now we have to deal with the consequences. And why do we deserve this? Because it just always happens to Philly fans. We just have to deal with it. It's almost like, you know what? Guess what? You are diseased. You have to do this. Why do we do this?
What's wild to me is if you looked at this blankly and you didn't associate Doc Rivers and you didn't associate the process and you didn't associate Joel Embiid and James Harden and Tobias Harris and everybody that you just mentioned, along with the fact that the Sixers have won 50 games, they won 54 games this past season, right? If you disassociate everything from that and just look at blank, tangible numbers, you would go, wow, 3 straight conference semifinals appearances, 72 games over 500, top 10 both defensively and offensively in efficiency this past season. One of 3 teams to do that in the entirety of the NBA. This is a success. And then you put all the stuff into it. You put how did it happen? You put why did it happen? You put why did it not happen, more importantly, and you realize that this is a monumental failure. It's been a monumental failure.
I'm at a point now where, like, do we say the process failed? And if it did
failed
fail,
5
what was the
years
worst
ago?
part of it? You know what I mean? Was it giving Tobias Harris the contract instead of Jimmy? Well, was it not taking Tatum and taking Fultz? Was it Ben Simmons? Or was it when we traded Drew Holiday for Nerlens Noel? Like, where did we go wrong? You know?
Well,
there were
I will
so many
say
spots you can say, well, that was the problem.
they were never going to get Tatum. I mean, the Celtics identified him as the guy. They were never going to trade the number 1 overall pick if we were going to take Tatum. So I don't fault them for that. I think Ben Simmons was pretty consensus the number 1 overall guy. It was just a disappointing situation. The ATV accident that may or may not have happened with Fultz, another disappointing specific situation. But for me, the massive issue is that regardless of who the Sixers have brought onto their roster, there's only one guy to me that actually has the drive to go into the playoffs and perform at that level that you need a superstar to perform at. And it was Jimmy Butler, and they decided not to go with him. So, Mark, that was exactly what kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back when they decided the Tobias Harris over me. Like, why? Tobias Harris stinks. The guy can't score at
Tobias
all
Harris doesn't stink.
unless it's garbage time. I understand.
Before Jimmy was there, while Jimmy was there, and now after Jimmy's gone, Tobias Harris stinks.
No, he doesn't.
Why did we pay that man? I don't understand.
I
Yeah,
will
he
walk
might
it
have
back.
some background noise and some garbage time stats. This guy stinks.
He doesn't absolutely stink, but he's not
He stinks.
worth a max contract. And for that
Oh,
reason,
you're not going to get any argument from me out of that.
for that reason, though,
absolutely
they're not getting enough value out of Embiid's prime, and that's the problem. And Embiid, I understand, yes, Embiid was a major problem in Game 6, especially in Game 7. He did not show up. However, I'm not going to be the first to be like, Embiid's not a clutch player, because he was well on the positive in both the Hawks and the Raptors series, and I think the rest of the team let him down. He can't do it all by himself. He won the MVP this year. Fantastic personal accolade. It's not enough, especially for this team and their expectations. However, what you're combining for less points significantly from, I mean, I don't know what the specific numbers were. I could easily pull it up, but you're combining Embiid, Harden, Maxey, Tobias Harris, and I don't think that it equates to the points that Jason Tatum scored alone in Game 7. That is unacceptable. And there's only one person for the collective nature of the stars that the Philadelphia 76ers have to do so poorly, and that's Doc Rivers. And I'm glad that he's gone, because I can't stand inept attitude. And for you to go into Game 6 and 7 with that added pressure to perform and finally get to the conference final, the only reason you were brought in as head coach, and you can't do it in consecutive seasons, in my opinion, when you had the opportunity. And I think that the Sixers, regardless of whether I think the Celtics were the better team in the series, I think the Sixers were so well positioned. All they had to do was win one more game. And in my opinion, if they had won Game 6, or if they had come out and won Game 7, they'd be the NBA champions. In my opinion, I think that's what would have happened. And yet here we are. Doc Rivers is gone. The Sixers failed to meet expectations, not even close to exceed expectations. And we have to be sad for a whole nother offseason. Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what they're going to bring in terms of a coach? Who knows if Embiid's going to want to jump ship eventually and go reunite with Jimmy Butler in Miami or what have you. I mean, this is an epic disaster, and it's really disappointing because this is the real series that I finally felt like it may never happen. Because I felt like the Raptors was a horrible series, especially the ending the way it did with the Kawhi shot. But this really feels like this might be the end of the Embiid era in terms of realistic opportunities to win an NBA title.
Well, I think if you go back to those series over the last couple of years, this is probably number 2 on the list of missed opportunities, right? Because I don't think the Sixers were better than the Raptors that year, right? The Jimmy Butler team was the best team, right? But I don't think they were better than the Raptors. Kawhi was walk on water, Jesus good that season. He was not going to be denied an NBA title. So you can take that series for what it's worth, right? You have Embiid is sick and bad performances. If they close out game 4, they're going to win that series in 6. You can go back to that, right? And then last year against Miami with Embiid's injury and very little gel time with James Harden, and the team just didn't seem like they were in a good spot. And of course, the whole Ben Simmons saga throughout the majority of the season. You could take last year and almost scrap it for what it's worth amongst those 4. You can't, but you can at the same time. The 2 that really stick out to me are, of course, this past weekend where you have an opportunity to go up 3 games or you're up 3 games to 2, and you have an opportunity to win game 6 at home. And of course, the Atlanta Hawks series. You can't lose 3 games at the Wells Fargo Center as the 1 seed to the Atlanta Hawks. And the last 4 seasons, and I know that not all 4 were Doc Rivers. The first one was Brett Brown. And it was the reason that he got fired. And it's the same reason that Doc Rivers now is not employed by the Sixers either. But the recurring string of events where this team has bowed out in the second round after second round after second round after second round, I'm not sure where they go from here. I have no idea.
I'm starting to wonder if it's a player thing, a coach thing, or is it just Philadelphia? Do we just have bad luck? Do sports teams just hate us? Did we win that Super Bowl and they're like, you know what? They're good for a while. This is done. Because at this point, it almost feels like bad luck. We get a number 1 pick in Ben Simmons. He turns out to be a bum. We get a number 1 pick in Markelle Fultz. He turns out to be a bum.
Bum.
Don't forget all about our number 2 pick, or what we had the other number 1 pick, Mickey Moniak, bum. We had 2 number 2 picks in Nolan Patrick and Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, weird situation, but turns out both of them turned out pretty much be bums at the end.
And the funniest thing about it, everything you guys just brought up, especially with the Sixers draft picks, everybody that you mentioned, the worst pick you didn't even bring up. Jahlil Okafor was the worst pick of the process tenure.
Yikes.
Like when you have multiple first-round picks like that, right? Ben Simmons was the right pick. I think Markelle Fultz was the right pick too, right? He was shot 44% from 3 at Washington. And whether you want to say that Tatum's the guy, hindsight's 2020. Markelle Fultz at the time was probably the right pick for the Sixers. I'll even give you the Mikal Bridges trade. As much as it haunts you not having Zaire Smith, right, because he couldn't play basketball and he had the issues off the court with his health, it garners you the first-round pick. You use that first-round pick for Miami to go and get Tobias Harris. And at the time, at least, you're starting to snowball this thing together into what looks to be a successful run. You go trade for Jimmy Butler and you give up nothing for him, right? Covington and Saric and Jared Bayless and a bunch of crap picks. All of that is fine. And I'm not even sitting here telling you who you should have taken, right? Are you going to take Pingus, Porzingis? It doesn't matter who you select in that draft, right? The other thing never made sense at the time. And now we're going way back, and it's way off the topic of Doc Rivers, but it's how we are – I don't even know if rationalizing is the right word. It's how we're coping with this whole thing.
Well, guys, I said it earlier. It was the Drew Holiday. Nerlens Noel. I mean, come on. But to be fair,
all the way back.
And you got Noel, you have Embiid. Why go get Okafor?
Guys, we knew this thing was cursed. The minute Andrew Bynum had the injury bowling. Like, you're not coming back as a franchise from that. However, I do want to pose this to you guys. This was a something that happened in my group chat earlier today that we talked about. What is more impressive? Getting Tony Roten to score 10 points in a game, or getting coaching the Sixers to a second round exit for the third consecutive year?
I'm not sure how the two equate at all.
Because I'm taking Tony Roten. I would rather have that team. I'd rather have. Let's restart. I'm going to campaign to restart the process. Restart the process. Come on, boys.
I can't
We
go
need
through
it.
process again.
It would be more fun. I can't stand another second round exit. I can't. If one more happens, I need a new team. I've never said that before in my life, truthfully. But like, I don't think that I can watch the Sixers if they do what they did this season for another season.
I don't know
the breaking point that I'm at.
I don't think I can go back to watching them win 20 games this season either, though.
But it was more fun.
That's true. They did
9
because they were such a joke. At least it was fun to be like, all right, we're trusting the process. Who cares? They're going to roll out Marco Bellinelli and Jody Meeks and see how many threes they can make in a loss. Like,
did you enjoy watching the Flyers this year?
I didn't watch them. I don't give
exactly,
a shit.
because it sucked that bad. So we won't watch the Sixers either.
You know what? They were a disappointment too, because all I did was root against them, and they didn't put themselves in a position to get Connor Bedard. And now they're going to suck for another decade. Because they don't have, Cutter Gauthier might be good. They might have some other pretty strong first-round picks, whatever. But they're not going to be good for another decade. The Sixers, if they don't get, in my opinion, if they don't get Damian Lillard or somebody like that to replace James Harden and figure it out on the bench and finally have some good luck, there's no chance that they win in the next 15 years. So to me, it's already pivoting to, well, I care about the Phillies, I care about the Eagles, and I don't really give a shit about the other two teams. We're going to have to just put them on the back burner, because if I care about them the way I cared about the Sixers this weekend, I'm going to jump off the balcony at my apartment complex. It's going to happen.
Considering maybe Mike's not the right person to ask, so Mark, I guess I'll ask you. Considering Mike is apparently okay with having a traffic cone be the head coach because nothing matters and everything is pointless. From here, there's a handful of names that have come about that have already started to circulate with this Sixers team about who may be the replacement for Doc Rivers, and your options are, I think, aplenty, but you have a plenty of ways to get this thing wrong. Mike Budenholzer, Sam Cassell internally, Nick Nurse, Frank Vogel, Monty Williams, Mike D'Antoni. There are a lot of names that are circulating around this team right now, and I'm interested in your guys' thoughts on who you think it's going to be, and B, who you would like it to be.
I think we already know Mike would want it to be like JJ Redick, because
I don't want it to be JJ Redick.
Absolutely tank this team.
Well, that's fair.
Mike wants like Steve from accounting to go take over. Yo, Steve, what do you know about basketball? I don't know anything except for the ball goes in the hoop. You're in. You're the coach.
There are two sides to my brain. There's one that just says restart the process, and I don't give a shit. And there's one that I really do give a shit, and I still want to hold on to feeling like they can actually win with Embiid. And that part of my brain really would like them to go get Nick Nurse or Monty Williams or stick with Sam Cassell. I am fine with any of those three. That part of my brain also tells me I think they're going to end up going and getting Mike D'Antoni, because that's the guy I don't want. And that's normally what the Sixers do, go and piss me off to a point where I'm almost out, but I'm still kind of in. But I still might want them to go JJ Redick's route, because then we're going to tank and we have traffic cones all over the court.
You guys know how they say your brain is left and right brained, and it's like creative is one side, like cognitive and analytics is the other side. Yeah. Mike's left and right brains are masochist and miserable, and that's all there is.
Sadistic and troubled.
No, Mike, we have a beautiful place for that. It's called therapy.
His therapist watches this and goes, "Oh my God, it's like every week. It never works. I don't understand."
Mike, did you break your TV this week?
Mike, you signed up to do this podcast as your therapeutic outlet. Why is it making you more miserable?
Correct. Mike, why are your friends starting to hate you? I don't know.
Jack doesn't even show up anymore. He says, I'm done with this.
I'm gonna go get another gig at the Country Bears and perform at Disney. I can't take this anymore.
All right, so Mike wants to nosedive off a cliff with this Sixers team, but he thinks it's going to be Mike D'Antoni. Mark, your thoughts?
I like Nick Nurse. I hate Mike D'Antoni. I don't think they're going to stay within the organization, so I don't think Sam Cassell is actually going to get to that position. I mean, I do think at this point, it's not a terrible move, but I don't know if that's the move they're going to make. I think they want to do that big move to say, oh, here we go. We're doing it for you. That way Philadelphia doesn't absolutely riot. That's all I can really think of at this point.
I think there is a small margin for error with this selection because as I said, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can go wrong because quite frankly, the perfect candidate doesn't exist because if the perfect candidate existed, they would still be coaching an NBA team right now. Or coaching an NBA team for the first time. Let's run through the gamut real quick of these coaches and figure out what the issue is as to why either they're no longer coaching or why I wouldn't want them as the Sixers head coach. Mike Budenholzer, right? Went to the NBA Finals, won the NBA Finals, has had an MVP. You talk about a coach. You just talked about a coach in Doc Rivers who never, ever, ever, ever makes adjustments. Bud's the exact same way. Bud would run his head into a brick wall head first in order to make his thing work. Let's go to Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse won the NBA Finals not too long ago as well. Nick Nurse's big knock is that he runs his starters almost to the capacity of Tom Thibodeau into the ground. You can't have that when you have Joel Embiid, who is often injured, and you need him to be as close to 100% healthy come playoff time as humanly possible. Frank Vogel, I'm not so sure knows how to run an offense. I don't know if he knows what he's talking about when it comes up to the offensive side of the ball. Monty Williams, you want to talk about collapses? Monty Williams is a great head coach, and he's a player's coach, and he's personable, and his players rally around him, except when they lose by 40 points in Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals to the Dallas Mavericks after blowing a 3-2 series lead. All of these guys, and then Sam Cassell is last, right? And I don't know about Sam Cassell. I know that players love Sam Cassell. I know he seems to be a good assistant coach. He seems to know what he's talking about. And of course, I know him from his playing days as a smart, good guard who knew what to do with the basketball in his hands and to do what to do with the basketball not in his hands. But he's never been a head coach before. So are you willing to turn the keys to a car that's basically on life support over to a first-time head coach?
Great analysis. First and foremost, I don't think it can get worse than Glenn Rivers. So whatever they do, I think they'll be fine. I will say in terms of the Nick Nurse situation, as much as I know that you made a compelling argument where I don't know that Embiid and Harden or whoever the heck they have as their stars will be able to last into the playoffs. However, I do feel like he's going to get a lot more out of the Sixers bench than Doc Rivers got. And that's something that at the very least intrigues me because if they get one game from the bench, one game in that series, they're on to the Eastern Conference Finals. There's no doubt in my mind about it, just based on the performances that they got from Harden in both of those games that he was performing, and then Embiid throughout the first half of the series. Outside of the game, obviously, he missed. But obviously, there are knocks on everybody. I don't think you're going to get a perfect scenario. They may just have to shake it up, and we'll get to that in a second. But I do want to pose a question to you guys, and this is obviously something that's been hotly debated on Twitter. I'm not sure where your heads are at. You might be totally vehemently against it. You might be really for it. What would your reaction be if, for whatever reason, Jay Wright came out of retirement and said, "Hey, I want to coach the Sixers"? Would you be excited? Would you be worried, or a bit of a mix?
I think for me, it's cautious optimism. I know what Jay Wright is as a head coach. I understand that Jay Wright is an incredibly intelligent head coach and he's a fierce competitor. I don't know what he is as an NBA head coach. He has the same for me, honestly, I'm not a big retread guy. I don't love the hire of a coach who just got fired, but in this particular capacity, because of the fact their backs are so squarely up against the wall, I'm not sure I love the idea of Jay Wright either. I know he's a great coach, but he's never coached in the NBA at that capacity before. And if I'm gonna pick a guy who's never coached as a team's head coach in that capacity in the NBA, I'm leaning Sam Cassell because he's been with the organization already.
So that's
Yeah, and
your
honestly, from college to the NBA is drastic. It's a much different game. It's a much different style. I mean, a lot different now. I think a little bit closer than it has ever been. But I mean, Jay Wright, he does know how to win. I like the cautious optimism because we know he knows how to win. We know he loves Philly. We know that he understands the city and how to kind of maneuver the media. It's just, does he know the NBA game? Does he know how to make it through a season with, a guy like Embiid, like you said, that is constantly injured, is also a big piece of the offense and defense. When he's on the floor, we're just a better team. So you got to make sure that whoever we do get, he needs to be somebody that understands how to manage that, how to manage a guy like Embiid, who we've seen is not, he loves Philly, he loves to play hard, but he also needs somebody to kind of keep him on the rails.
And I will say this about whomever the choice may be. If it's Sam Cassell, I'm cautiously optimistic, just like I would be with Jay Wright because of the first time head coaching thing. If it's not Sam Cassell, you are not only losing your head coach, but I would imagine at that point you're losing your assistant coach as well. I don't think Sam Cassell would want to come back under a new head coach unless it's somebody that he's familiar with, which could include Monty Williams, right? Of course, because Monty Williams was on the Sixers coaching staff right before Sam Cassell was as well. But I can't guarantee that he would want to come back to this coaching staff. So there is a plausible outcome in which you not only lose your head coach, but you might lose one, if not more than one, of your top.
Well, I mean, most of the time, whenever a head coach gets hired, they bring in their own guys. They're going to have his assistant coach.
Sure, but more times than not, you don't have a coaching staff that's as tenured as the coach has been. Dan, who's a defensive coordinator for years and years and years. Dave Yeager's been a head coach before. Sam Cassell's been knocking on the doorstep of being a head coach for the last couple of seasons. It's, you don't have an experienced, untenured young coaches who are going to, who are easily replaceable. These are three guys who are all very experienced in the coaching, hierarchy of the NBA, and you could lose potentially all three of them if you're not careful.
So, boys, just to kind of wrap this discussion, because I do want to talk more about the Sixers and where they go from here. Give me your name. You're the Sixers front office. Who is your ideal candidate? Just a name. You can do a quick little reason why, but you get the chance to make that hire. Who you going for? Sixers next head coach. Tyler, I'll start with you.
Nick Nurse. And the reason that I believe that it is Nick Nurse is because of the creativity that I've seen him operate with the Raptors in the past. Other than the Kawhi team, he has been dealt a hand that is less than what other good or great NBA teams have been provided, and they've contributed. And I don't just mean roster based. If you remember, the year after COVID, they had to play an entire season in Tampa as their home base because they weren't able to play games in Toronto. They still made they struggle for a year. They get Scotty Barnes with the 4th overall pick. They get right back into making the playoffs. I think that you would get more out of your bench under Nick Nurse than you would some of these other coaching options. So for me, he's option number one with Sam Cassell and Monty Williams as probably 2A and 2B.
You even gave me time, and I still don't know.
Come on, Marky.
I don't know. I don't have an answer either. Listen, I'm just throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks.
You make the decision. It's your decision.
Give me Sam Cassell. Let me see what he can do with the team. Give him a year. Let him see what he already kind of has his system in place a little bit. He just has to tweak it out of what Doc had before. He knows the guys, and I think the guys probably trust him. Give him a shot. Why not?
Certainly fair.
Nick Nurse sounds like a great option, honestly.
The internal hire always gives a trust factor, no doubt.
Yeah. I think we kind of need that as a right now.
Yeah. I love both of those, and I think, like I mentioned, those were two of the three names that I'd bring in. I think just to kind of round it out to be different, I would probably say Nick Nurse as well, but I really like Monty Williams. I think that he does have that similar trust factor. He's worked with Embiid and a lot of those core guys before. just to be able to have some of that familiarity and have some of that trust is important when you're dealing with stars. I do think that to drastically make changes is going to cause a little bit of animosity. We've seen too much change and too much turnover over the past couple of seasons between the Brett Brown era, having Ben Simmons, choosing between different stars to round out the team with Embiid at the helm. I just would like to see a little bit more continuity, even if it's somebody returning like a Monty Williams. But at the end of the day, something's got to change. And
So
go ahead.
let me really quickly for you give you my hand gestures for each coach, right? So Sam Cassell, Nick Nurse, Monty Williams, thumbs up. Mike Budenholzer, I guess right in the middle, right? I'll be okay with it. Frank Vogel gets a big old thumbs down.
I would do the
And Mike
Home Alone
D'Antoni-
face.
And Mike D'Antoni gets the
Dear
two
God.
middle finger salute. The two middle finger salute for you.
Mike D'Antoni gets
I'm
the
out on D'Antoni big time.
he gets the Michael Scott gif. Oh God, no, this can't be happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the
Pat.
good news is three of the candidates I would be happy with, whether it be internally with Cassell, with Monty Williams, or with Nick Nurse. I mean, that's almost, it's 3/7 of the names we mentioned. I can live with it.
So it's going to be JJ Redick. Huh?
Yeah, can I tell you a secret? It's not going to be any of those guys. You guys have been Sixer fans long enough to know they're not going to make a decision you're happy with.
Yeah, I know.
Let me
not
throw it
getting
on its
like-
head here. All right. All right, boys. What does it take? Just spitballing here. Just noodling. What does it take to get Ja Morant on the Sixers?
A really good official from the NRA.
I did just see a really funny thing on Twitter. Someone posted, name a more iconic duo than the D'Amelio twins. I'll wait. And it was just a picture of Ja Morant and a firearm.
No.
Brutal.
No.
I'm done with that situation.
But
There's no lesson
if
learned.
he's exonerated and you can get him on the cheap, does he change the trajectory of the Sixers franchise over the next decade?
Sure.
We took Michael Vick
course.
after he got out of prison. I mean, come on.
I mean, I think, yeah, of course he does. He's a 24-year-old superstar point guard who can score at will, who can score at the rim, who can run the break, and is, one of the best athletes I've ever seen play the game of basketball. Like, yeah, of course he does. What does it take? I don't think they have what it takes. They have no first-round picks to move, and I don't think Memphis is going to sit here and go, "Yeah, sure, we'll take Tobias Harris's expiring contract."
I don't know.
Well,
What's
So the answer's not the answer's trade numbers off on 2K, right? Like salary cap no on 2K. Realistically speaking, the answer is nothing.
Okay, so realistically speaking, where do the Sixers go from here? Does James Harden return? Do
Yeah.
they try to pivot? How
Yeah.
can they pivot? No, it's just going to be James Harden or bust, and they're going to need to win with that team. Is there anybody else they can bring in to make this situation any better? Are we stuck with what we just saw again, minus Doc Rivers, and hope to God that they don't screw up as bad as they did this season?
I think we're going to see Tyrese Maxey have a bigger role, even more so, which could be good or bad. I think, unfortunately, James Harden comes back and takes up a little bit of space, and he'll probably look worse than he did this past year. And then we have to just deal with Tobias Harris still.
Yeah,
Hopefully, a new coach knows how to, but that's what we're going to get.
your starting five is going to look identical to what it was a year ago. It's going to be the same five guys, and you're going to figure out bench pieces. Probably Niang's not back. Shake Milton's not going to be back. Furkan Korkmaz is not going to be back. Not that those two guys played anyway. But,
Oh no!
Daniel House, McDaniels, you're going to try to figure out if they're back or how you're replacing. But I don't think much changes.
PJ Tucker's contract.
2 more years.
I forget.
He had
I
a couple
enjoy
years.
PJ Tucker. He's a fun little piece to have. Not because he's that great, but because he's
because
gonna
he
keep the team.
cares. He's the only
Yeah,
guy on the
because-
team that actually cared. However, I would like him a
Okay.
lot more if he remembered that he used to be able to shoot corner threes a lot better than he did. I mean, he
Well, I
figured
think
it
he
out
shot
for
the
a
ball. I think
quarter.
he shot the ball pretty well in Game 6 and part of Game 7.
Well,
But
yeah,
you're
I mean,
paying
at the
PJ
in
Tucker
the
for
first
16
quarter of
games.
Game 7, sure, but after that and the rest of the series, eh, they just need more. Okay, taking a step back here. What are the chances, and would you welcome a return of Seth Curry despite him not really being strong
Sure.
defensively?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I like
you
Seth
need
Curry.
a bench shooter. I don't know how it's
Yeah.
going to happen, but yeah, absolutely.
Also, it helps the inside out game a little bit for Embiid. He doesn't have
Yeah.
to go out there. I
Well-
kind of hate when he's out there.
Yeah. And again, all of this is me as a depressed, sadistic Sixers fan, just trying to make sense and figure out a way that it's possible.
Yo,
for
what if
them
they
to-
traded Tobias and a second round pick in 2042 for Giannis? How great would that be?
What
Like,
if they
that's-
trade Tobias
that's where
for
your brain
Jordan
is at.
Poole? I saw that.
You're-
I did see that
You're
today.
struggling you're struggling to cope with the fact that this thing is much closer to the end than it is to the beginning.
Tobias for Jordan Poole and Jonathan Kuminga would be an interesting trade. That is a tweet that I saw today
On what?
on
The
Twitter.
Warriors are not making that deal.
I know.
Wishful Philadelphia fan. That's what that was. Sorry, wishful Philadelphia fan.
Yeah.
I won't
exactly.
shout him out because he's a friend, but dear God, that is way off base.
Mark, why would you tweet that?
Mark, Gary,
don't even know
Gary
how to
got
read.
the,
That's true.
it's
That's
not
well
his fault.
established.
He
How could I
can't read.
possibly tweet it?
All right, guys. Well, the recurring theme of today's episode is, of course, Doc Rivers has been fired, and we feel a little bit hopeless heading into next season. So hopefully we'll have some opportunity to discuss some better things coming up. By the way, before we get out of here, San Antonio Spurs, #1 overall pick in the 2023 NBA draft, which almost assuredly, assuming that they don't do something crazy, almost assuredly means that they will get Victor Wembanyama as their #1 overall pick.
Not
Obviously,
too
it's rigged.
shabby.
I don't think we have to go any further with it. The NBA is fully rigged. It's always been rigged. The lottery system's rigged. I hate.
Well,
the
I don't know about the
NBA.
league,
It's
but
stupid. It's rigged.
I don't know about the league, but the lottery has been, I think, has been compromised.
Oh,
There's
just
no
wait
doubt.
for Bronny Jr.'s first season and when him and LeBron win a goddamn title together. And then we're all going to have to sit there and be like, oh, no, it's not rigged. This is just a really cool story. Get the
This is crazy.
fuck out of here.
Can we talk about how
No.
LeBron James Jr., Bronny James was touring Malvern Prep allegedly. Could we imagine what it would be like if we ended up getting LeBron? Because it's the only way it can make me happy thinking what if. Because the Sixers
No.
in their current state in their previous couple of years have just been absolutely miserable.
Mike, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to go plug your Xbox or your PlayStation in, whichever one you have. Fire up your latest edition of 2K and go win the NBA Finals with the Sixers. Just go do it.
I'm not good enough. My 2K skills are not very.
You don't
elite.
need to be
Put it on
good.
rookie. You
Just,
got
just
this. You'll be
put it
all
on
right.
rookie and simulate it and make the best team possible.
I'm gonna
Simulate it
make-
all the way to the finals and then just play the last game.
Play
Make
the
yourself-
last game. Yeah, and then they
You
show
wanna
the
know-
confetti coming down.
Oh, don't even start. You want to know how mad I am? I am so spiteful from the Sixers. I'm gonna go make Zach
Can't see
Edey
my
get him
forehead.
drafted. Zach Edey's gonna get drafted by the Sixers. I'm gonna win an NBA title, and I'm gonna send a screenshot, or I'm gonna send a Snapchat to Jack and be like, ha 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 ha. And there's no reason behind it other than that I'm miserable, so I'm gonna make somebody else miserable.
Let's be honest, any team that has Zach Edey is not going to win a title. So we're fine. At least that won't happen either. Just like the Sixers winning another title. Anytime.
Joke's
if-
on you. He's
What
he's
if the
going to get
Sixers
selected by
draft
like
Zach Edey?
Boston in the 50th pick.
What? Oh well, they don't have a pick. Yeah, that's right. But what if they traded?
Nope, they don't have any picks.
No, they
They have
don't.
no picks forever.
No, they're.
At least no
You-
movable picks.
You mean they don't have any assets?
Wow, surprising.
Crazy.
Well,
We have the MVP. That's a big asset.
The-
But, you know.
the asset-less, head coach-less, Eastern Conference Finals appearing less 76ers are done once again. So, guys, I've been thoroughly depressed. This has helped a little bit. I said I couldn't get hurt, and then here I am, miserable. because I'm a liar. But this has helped a little bit, so I appreciate you both being a group therapy session for us today.
I want to jump off the balcony a little bit less.
Just beat those drums, my buddy. Beat those
Yeah.
drums.
Yep.
Well, gentlemen, we will be back with a full podcast episode. Jack Molesky will be back with us later this week. It should drop probably late towards the end of the week, barring any unforeseen circumstances. But guys, it's been a lot of fun. If you have not yet, for everybody listening, please do us a favor. If you're watching this on YouTube, just drop that like button, of course, on this video. And if you wouldn't mind, hit that subscribe button as well. We are really appreciative of everything you do. And of course, you can find us on all your platforms that you get your podcasts, like Apple, Spotify, and so on and so forth. So, gentlemen, we will catch back up with you in just a couple of days. We'll have a full hour-long pod with the four-man crew right back here on Crossing the Line Podcast.
If you like the vibe, please subscribe.